Honor to be able to bring together Dr. Kent Butler, who serves as the president-elect of the American Counseling Association. He is the Chief Equity and Inclusion and Diversity Officer for the University of Central Florida. We're so excited to be able to greet him as he shares his perspective of humanizing diversity, healing while Black.
Greetings, everyone. And just allow me to share my screen. So this morning, I hope that everyone is doing okay. I know for me, I have to think about 8 minutes and 46 seconds every day since the death of George Floyd. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about my journey and what it means to be healing while Black. Before we get started, I'd like you to watch a video that a student and I put together that kind of speaks to what I'm going to be talking about today.
Does anybody hear me? Ooh. Is anybody listening to what's going on? Before we move on, does anybody hear? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening? Is anybody listening? How can we change? Before it's too late, young with dreams, had them for a long time. Well, nothing's impossible as long as you put your mind to it. Sometimes you wanna let go, hold on tight, but you gotta believe with God on your side. Does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening to what's going on? Before we move on, does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening? Listen to my people. How can we change before it's too late? Happy, that's all you ever wanna be. Well, knowledge is power. Absorb as much as you need. At times I feel like love passed me by. Just imagine how the kids feel inside. Does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening? Is anybody listening? Before we move on, does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening? Listening to me? How can we change before it's too late? Before it's too late. Does anybody hear me? When you feel you need a friend. Is anybody listening to what's going on? Before we move on, does anybody?
All that's necessary for the evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I think about the passing of John Lewis, and he's saying, get into good trouble. this is one of the quotes that I look to as I do this work, because I believe in the fact that we need to all step up and be a part of the changes that we want to see that occur, especially in these here United States. When I first started to teach, I came across a video or a passage from a book that kind of talked about who do you want to be and how do you want to be affected, or do you want to affect the world? And I think about this a lot as I do presentations in terms of how do I share myself and how do I allow people to think about what is it that they want to do? What is it that is in their passion that makes them strong, but sometimes make them weak? What is it that allows them to kind of step away from their own selfish interior life and move forward and allow the world to feed you? So I always ask those, especially those that are in my classroom, what is it that you're afraid of? Why don't you let the world feed you? Let me and people who look like me and people who don't look like me and people from other various intersectionalities feed you so that you can become whole, perfect the art of living. So a lot of things that happen in the world, we look at that word privilege, and it's afforded to some, not all, in many cases, right? And so it means kind of to be belonging to a class that enjoys special privileges, right? I think about it when I travel around and I see spaces where I'm not allowed to go, or it's perceived that I'm not allowed to go because of the way that the world is. And I'd like you to kind of think about privilege and look at that word. Look at it very, very intently. Because I want to share something with you that I thought about as I was looking at this word. It's stuck right there in the middle of this word. It's the word vile. So often I see people who have privilege really vilely using their privilege. And what that means to me is that they're morally bad, wicked, right? They don't want to share. What is that all about, right? So when you think about people who are privileged, also think about the fact that within their privilege, they can be very, very vile, which is counterintuitive to the word in and of itself, in the way that it's being used. So when we think about equality and equity, that's the things that we see all the time. Everyone has these little prompts in terms of what's equity and what's equality. What are the social determinants that are happening and that are causing the world to kind of, deal with certain types of things that are happening, whether who's high on the hill, living in their white picket fence home, and who needs the support, and then who just can't get out of the rut, right? And then there's the social barriers that continue to be in the way. But one of the things I want us to be able to do is understand what inclusion means. Inclusion actually means us being at the table, right? Being a part of the game, not being hidden or having to watch over a wall what others can have. And so we need to find ways that we can make sure that people who want to succeed and want to be a part of this world can do so without anything hampering their ability to do that. It brings me to, why am I here? What was it in the life of my parents, who have now passed on, to want to bring children into this world, to want to make sure that I had and my sisters had the types of things, the kinds of dreams that all children should have, to be whomever they want to be able to do and go and live anywhere that I wanted to live. Because one of the things that I need to have you all understand is that the reality of my parents was that they grew up in a time where they saw signs like this. And I always wonder, what made them want to have children? What made them go through these types of situations where they weren't allowed at a time when they weren't able to vote or able to go into this place or that place? My father grew up in Alabama. So I think about his life all the time, and I see all the things that have went on and the things that have occurred because of him living as a Black man in that day and time. And I also wonder, what was it, Dad? What was it that said that, you know what, we can be better, we can do better? And he had dreams for us. And so I wonder if these signs are still in existence today. Well, maybe not the physical signs. Maybe you see it now because I have it on this screen, and we don't necessarily walk in spaces where we see these signs, but the signs are invisible for many of us, and we know where and when we can be in some cases. Some of the signs look like this. And when we think about this and what it means, where do you want to go? What do you want to be great again? What does that mean? We also know that these are those signs that there are people who are trying to stay in control and not allow others to be able to be a part of what is happening in the world. And so therefore we come back to this again. Every day when we see a MAGA hat or we see a Confederate flag or we see something that is in our midst telling us that we don't belong, that we're not included, that they just as soon see us dead, swinging from trees, than to move forward and be a part of a life where we can just go and enjoy and be a part of what God has created for us to all be able to be a part of. So part of what my parents was able to do for me and what I started to do work in as a person who has a degree in counselor education was looking at my self-concept and what it took to be able to move forward and recognize that I was supposed to be here, right? Faith in oneself is not egocentric, right? That I am willing to see who I am, dig deep, and seek growth. And I think that's a part of the message I want to share today, is that I want all of us to be able to seek growth, rethink things, unlearn things, and recognize that everyone should be able to move forward in their own self-esteem through the life's challenges that we put forth to ourselves, not because someone is placing them there in front of us. We need to be self-aware and develop a self-trusting yet critical questioning stance on who we are, right? Not always thinking that we have the right answers and that we don't always get it right, and sometimes owning when we get it wrong. But recognizing in that self-awareness that I am a part of a collective of individuals who also have a right. We have to have some self-knowledge about ourselves and understanding that self-knowledge leads to self-love. And I choose to love myself. And in my love for myself, I then take this out and I do the advocacy work that I am doing. And so I invite you all to understand who you are, recognize who you are, believe in yourself, and then go and do for others. Be an advocate. Because anti-racism comes into play. And with that, we're looking to eliminate what those structures are, what those systems that are in place to keep people at bay, right? Identifying, challenging, changing a systemic system is what should be all about. And I think this is what this forum's for today, for us to think about what it is to be a Black person, right? Living while Black. Part of our narrative, unfortunately, stems from racism. Our lineage comes from people who had to deal with people who thought they were less than. And we're fighting every day to move away from that. You may have seen this in your journey. One of the new things that have come out is kind of coming from Dr. Kendi's book in some regards about how to become an anti-racist. To understand how to move from the fear zone into a learning zone where we understand our own privileges and we ignore them. And we understand how we got to move away from racism to the growth zone, where we start to stand up and understand who we are, and we educate our peers. Today, I want to educate those who still might sit in the blinders and not understand what's going on in the world, and ask the question, well, what can I do? Well, what you can do is dig down deep and understand through your own pain what's happening in the lives of others. A young student took it a step further and looked at it in terms of a transformational zone, and looking at how we move from the I to the we. And so if you had not seen this, think about how do we all then learn about ourselves, grow, go out and be an advocate for our organizations. As the incoming president of ACA, part of what I would love to do is help our organization recognize that we all need to be a part of the puzzle. We all need to be included. We need to hear the voices of every single last one of our counselors and recognize that we all have value. So there's a change in culture that's coming. And I see it every day. It stems from the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that have been going on in the world since the death of George Floyd. I see people starting to sink into the fact that these things are really happening. I can't turn a blind eye to the fact that you told me that you were racially profiled. You told me that this little microaggression happened to you, and I didn't choose to own it and sit with you in that. I tried to make you believe that there was a falseness to it, that it didn't happen to you. Well, the culture is changing, and we're starting to recognize that people are having these atrocities set upon them by people who think they know better than them, who think they are better than them. And I'm recognizing that that change, though slow, is permeating in the air every day from the people who now are looking to be active, to be our allies, and to move forward. But in moving forward, we need to recognize that as counselors, especially in the role of counselors, and this is something that I think can be transferable to all walks of life, no matter what type of position you are in, is that we need to be aware of our own beliefs and our attitudes and our biases. And we need to recognize how what we do in our world, how we ripple affect others' lives, are the things that are influencing each and every step that we take, and influences those who are, in our presence. We have to develop an appreciation for diverse cultures, and not just go and grab an artifact or do something different. And it's more about getting to know, and this to kind of come in and center yourself in other things that you may be uncomfortable with, but you want to be a part of. Understanding your limitations and your competence level. Seeking understanding, right? It's different when you seek understanding than you come in and ask, teach me, tell me what I need to say. How do I address this person now that all this is going on and I want to be there for them? Well, how have you done that in any other situation in life? Why is this time hard? What barriers have you put in front of yourself to stop you from being a human being and caring for the life of another? When we think about our clients, we think about the fact that we need to know who they are and understand their worldviews and things along those lines in order to begin where they are, right? and help them to appreciate them holistically. That is the thing that I'm hoping that we can start to do in more proactive ways, as opposed to trying to stand behind the fact that, oh, I'm a counselor, that's all I need to do. Well, we need to actively engage with our communities as well and understand them and help to influence them and be the voice for those who cannot be the voice for themselves. So we think about best practices. In my journey, I have had the opportunity to be a part of the Multicultural Social Justice Counseling Competencies. And here is a framework. And it talks about how we as privileged and or marginalized counselors work with privileged and or marginalized clients and what that means. And what do we need to do within that? How do we know about ourselves and then know about our clients and understand the world that they live in as well as the world that we live in, and develop a strong counseling relationship that goes out and advocates and does action in the lives of our community members to help make changes to the systemic pieces that have been so grounded in the way that we see the world right now. How do we go and dismantle those things that are stopping people from having life as all should have? Knowledge is power. We need to recognize that. We have to be knowledgeable of what's happening across this world. We can't turn a blind eye to that. And so the things that I want to talk about also go to our code of ethics. The counseling competencies are tied to our ethics. And to do no harm. And if we can just help the world to recognize that to do no harm means to not stand in someone's way, and to recognize them and let them be great in ways that have not always been the case. A knowledge, I think, is an understanding of history, recognizing that we weren't always taught the right things, and that history books, especially when we were in grade school, didn't talk about what slavery really was, didn't talk about what the slave patrols were doing that have led to what we see in the streets today when our police officers are out there brutalizing some of our members of society. And so there's a history that we need to understand. When the slave patrol used to go out and bring back those slaves that were running away, or go to the north and actually take people who were free and try to make them slaves. Those are the things that we need to recognize and talk about. And when somebody says, why do we keep going back to the past? Well, we go back to the past because that's what the pain is. And that's what's helping us to sometimes hold these adversarial relationships with our counterparts who don't seem to understand that when a person wasn't seen as a whole person, that these were the things that were blocking them and stopping them from having prosperity in the world. So we need to be aware. We need to figure out how to match our therapeutic approaches to those that our clients actually need, and recognize that if we sit there and send clients back into a damaged world without trying to help change that world, then we're not necessarily helping them. And so moving forward from that perspective. So our skills need to be flexible, and we need to think fast on our feet sometimes. And we have to communicate effectively, right? Using language and nonverbal behaviors that are things that draw people in, as opposed to make them feel some kind of way about us. Be familiar with where to send people when we don't know how to do it, because there's times when we don't know what we're doing. And we need to recognize that and own that, and maybe move someone towards someone who can help them and support them. And most of all, be authentic, not fake. And allow those relationships to kind of cultivate themselves so that you can do the work that you were called to do as a counselor. One of the books that I draw myself to is called Unstoppable Me. And the thing that I love about this book is it kind of talks about 10 ways in which we, as a person, belong and are here in this world, and that nothing should stop us. And I'll talk about this a little bit later in terms of why this book is so important. But what it does in terms of my advocacy, I recognize that because I'm unstoppable, that there are things that I must sacrifice in terms of my advocacy to make sure that the people who are in my purview and the things that people that I have the ability to support and help, that I sacrifice my time and my space and sometimes time with my family in regards to supporting that. That I understand that there's something to be said about unity and that we need to unite. And I'm not here to fight folks, and I'm not here to make people feel guilty or feel like they are to blame, but I'm asking you to join in and recognize where you might have been culpable with a microaggression or with anything that has been a barrier for somebody who you have had some kind of learned behavior to either hate or to not like or to distrust or anything along those lines. Then there's morality, which I think as counselors, we need to also recognize that where's your moral center? Who are you as a moral being? And if you are a moral being who believes that everybody has a right, then what are you seeing in the world? And what are you closing yourself away from when you don't see the things that people have been screaming about till they were blue in their face about the injustices that have been going on in the world? And then there's meliorism, which is about us all coming together, right? It's a part of that unity again, coming together and working together and doing this good work together to make systemic changes so that Black lives do matter. And not in the vein of all lives mattering, because right now the struggle is within the Black community, and we want to support the moving forward of that community. We want there to be equity. And most of all, we want there to be respect. Respect of person, respect of communities, respect of life in general. And I think social activists need to understand that we can be citizens, we can be rebels, we can definitely be change agents and reformers. So you look at this and decide, who am I? What role do I take on? And these things are fluid, right? There's maybe a day that I just want to be a citizen. I want to sit back and I just want to make sure that the world is okay though. And then there's the times when I'm going to take to the streets and I'm going to protest and be a rebel. But however you become a change agent in this world, do so that others who are behind you can move forward as well and take those stances. Each role is equally important. No one is better than anyone else in how they fight for this justice. But what it is that we all want to make sure that there is some type of social change, because the way it's happening right now, it's not what it needs to be. We need to move away from that. We need to find out how to break the chains that bind, to remember our past, but move to a much more vibrant, much more profitable, much more interesting, and much more loving future. So I don't know why most people do this, but I have an 8-year-old daughter. Her name is Summer Joy. And the work that I'm doing, I think back to what my parents were doing. And I wonder, what was it? What was it that made them want to have children? I know that through myself and my own journey, I know what it's like to raise a daughter and want her to have the best of the best, to be able to go anywhere, to be able to achieve her dreams without roadblocks, without barriers, without somebody looking at her because of the color of her skin and then putting her in some category and telling her what she can and she cannot do. It's about love. My fight for justice is about love. And there's no time to play because she's moving forward. There's things that she wants to do. She's seeing challenges and she's trying to climb and meet those challenges. And so therefore, as a good parent, I'm trying to clear the pathway, making sure that she doesn't get hurt. So why is it worth the fight? It's because it's for my Summer. My sacrifice, my ability to unify, my morality, my meliorism, my equity, and the respect I have for all of you is because of my summer. And I'm going to go out and continue to fight for her. And I ask you all to fight for her. This is my Maslow hierarchy of needs. This is my want for shelter and for food and for belonging is right here. This is my Butler hierarchy of needs, and it's through my summer. I can't deny her. I want for her. I need for her. And I'm going to continue to make sure that the pathway for her is cleared. So going back to Unstoppable Me, there are 10 things that are brought out in this book that talk about how we can be resilient and understand ourselves. And that goes back to the self-love and the self-knowledge that we have of ourselves and bringing our self-concept to being, recognizing that we are great no matter what. No matter what anyone else says to us, we have a right to be here. We have a right to move forward. We have a right to want. And because of that, we're great no matter what. Our persistence pays off. It took me a minute to get to the presidency of ACA, but I got here. And now that I'm here, I want to be a force. I want to make sure that we understand why it took so long to recognize that a person who did not look like the status quo could also be a leader and can bring this organization forward. So persistence pays off. Welcoming the unknown, because I don't know what's going to happen every day. Every day I walk out of my door as a Black man, not knowing what I'm going to see or what I'm going to come across, not knowing what I should fear for my life, or that if I'm going to have a happy moment or a beautiful moment when I walk into a store, especially now with a mask on. What are people thinking about me? And what are they going to put value on my life to be because of my existence in that space? So welcoming the unknown. I have a choice. I can sit at home and I can kind of quiver and say, you know what, the world is just too tough, but I'm not going to buy into that. I believe we're all supposed to be here. So I give a farewell to worry. And I start to think about the peace that's inside. The peace that must have been with my parents when they said, you know what, I can have this child. The peace that I know that I have, knowing that I also wanted to bring a child into this world. And I had dreams for her to be who she wants to be. I also understand that it's hard to enjoy the here and now in the pandemic, but there's moments, there's still laughter, there's still things that we can do to enjoy where we are right now, and recognizing that we have to, for our sanity, to be able to kind of allow ourselves to be in this space, to be in this new, what they want to call normal. And it's also taking care of myself and being healthy and exercising and recognizing that in order for me to be here for my daughter, I have to be a healthy being in order to make that happen. And being creative. As a counselor, we have to every day recognize our creativity within our work with our clients. We need to be able to do that work. I think as a human being, as a social justice advocate, we have to be creative. We have to meet them where they are, find our ways in, because sometimes there's so much that's blocking people from listening and hearing us. How do we move forward from that? And last but not least, what will you give? What are you going to give to the world because of who you are and what you can do? So I believe that, you know, as Malcolm and as Martin have talked about, I don't have a chip on my shoulder. I have people trying to hold me back. That foot on my neck. How many years ago were we talking about that? And then this year, 8 minutes and 46 seconds of a knee on the neck. This is what Malcolm was talking about. And so we need to be heard. We need to move forward and make sure that we can be heard. And with that, we will change the society. We will change the world because we have a right to be here. And we're taking no for an answer. No, we have to move forward past that. And so I choose to make a difference. I choose to work with the mentoring program that I have in Florida here. I choose to work with my students. I choose to speak out to you all, to use my home in AMCD, Association for Multicultural Counseling and Development, as my mentors have been there. The people who have pushed me forward to allow me to rise and to make a name for myself in the name of social justice and to use that for good. So I ask for your support and your help, and I need you to give me a tug and a push and tell me where I got it wrong as I move forward, because I'm doing this for us. I'm doing this for a country. I'm doing this for all of us to be able to have what we need to have. And I'm not sure how much time I got left, but before I go, I want to play a little bit of a song for you all.
Are you on the schedule?
Am I on schedule?
Yes, you are. Thank you so much. You asked just for the right thing. And so we want to say thank you so much. First of all, thank you for spending the time with us last Saturday in planning and preparation. It was a good Saturday morning, just talking about what this looks like, what this means, and its ability to be applied to our work. And then thank you for sharing this morning with us. So again, now we will have our very own Senator Rouson join us as we talk about when the political is personal. Thank you, Dr. Butler.
Thank you.